The Polish town of Elk has suffered a day of rioting over the fatal stabbing of a local man outside a kebab shop. A 21-year-old Polish man was killed in a brawl there after throwing a firecracker at the diner. A report suggests the attackers were of Northern African descent, but police have not confirmed the claims. Now, as news of the man's death spread, crowds gathered outside the kebab shop managed by men of foreign descent, chanting racist slogans and throwing rocks and firecrackers at the windows. These pictures were taken at the scene as the situation deteriorated. Riot police later arrived, making a number of arrests after some of the rioters pelted the police with projectiles. A number of cop cars were reportedly damaged as well. Well, we can now hear from Sergio Trifkovic, a political author and commentator, joining us live here on RT International. Good to see you today. Do you think when it comes to the details of this incident, they're still a little bit uncertain, but the police are trying to confirm the reports, that we understand the crowds still went out onto the street setting fire to 2 restaurants? Is that an overreaction, do you think? How do you read the case?
Well, first of all, we have to remember that only 2 days ago, the truck driver, the Polish truck driver who was killed in Berlin 3 hours before the rampage, which killed 15 and injured dozens, this has really focused the attention of the Poles on what is widely perceived as the Muslim migrant threat to Europe. So President of Poland, Andrzej Duda, attended the funeral, and it was a very high-profile occasion. So I think it is really this context that provides the wider framework for anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim mood in Poland. Secondly, in general, it is the former Soviet bloc countries, the so-called Visegrad 4, which also includes the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary, which have offered stiff resistance to the attempt by the European Union to impose migrant quotas on individual member countries, regardless of their parliament's will or of their public opinion. So it is really in this context that this should be seen as an expression of nativist anger and resistance to what is seen in Central and Eastern Europe as Western Europe's failed policy of excessive welcoming of the migrants and unsuccessful attempt to absorb them into the host society.
Which is what, as you moments ago, called the Muslim migrant threat. There certainly seems to be a term or a phrase that does get headlines, certainly in Western Europe these days. Sergio, yesterday we discussed the issue with international affairs expert Michael Opraskalski. Let's listen to what he had to say. Have a listen to this.
There is a spectrum within the Polish society that comes from the extreme right and extreme church forces who try to exploit the immigrant question, which is not a question for Poland at the moment.
So that man there, Sergio, talking about the extreme right creating a vacuum for opportunists, potentially, the right-wingers to make their case. Do you agree with him?
Absolutely not. In fact, I think that equating resistance to migrant influx with the extreme right is exactly the mistake that West European politicians are making. There are millions of perfectly decent, non-racist people who feel that something very important is happening in both the demographic and social sense, and that their quality of life is going down as a result. If we look at the situation in France, in Holland, in Germany even, where the welcoming atmosphere for immigrants was absolutely amazing last year, this has changed not because these people are extreme rightists, but because they have perfectly understandable grievances and apprehensions about the future. And in Poland and other Central and East European countries, people see that Angela Merkel's policies have produced problems which will not be solved for years, if not decades. And they do not want to create no-go areas in Warsaw and Krakow or Bratislava, Prague and Budapest. They do not want to have the ghettos into which no policeman dare venture on his own. And so I would say that simply ascribing this to the opportunism of the extreme right, which wants to exploit this mythical threat, is exactly the kind of elite view that underestimates the genuine feeling of apprehension of millions of perfectly decent, middle-of-the-road Europeans.
All right, Sergej Trifkovic, a political author and commentator, joining us live here on RT International. Many thanks indeed for your insight today. Thank you.